First ever movie I watched on movie was Jim Jarmusch's 2003 black and white anthology movie Coffee and Cigarettes, and it is here where I became familiar with Jim Jarmusch's style of writing and directing, and it is here where I learned that he is an established and acclaimed filmmaker within the independent cinema scene. Now, for this video, I'm going to try a different format than the one I usually do and have done in past videos where I've broken down characters and themes of the films that were being analysed and talked about. The reason for this is because Coffee and Cigarettes is an anthology film that utilizes actors playing somewhat fictionalized versions of themselves, and the film consists of 11 short stories or vignettes where said actors are sitting down, conversing and socializing with each other over, you guessed it, coffee and cigarettes. Coffee and Cigarettes is a captivating anthology film because from the minute the film starts, Jim Jarmusch introduces one actor already sitting down and then introduces another actor who sits down and starts conversing and socializes with the former. In some of the vignettes, two actors are already sat down in conversation with one another. Getting back to Jim Jarmusch, he takes a very minimalistic approach throughout the film. The locations are usually limited to indoor cafes, and the film uses black and white instead of colour. Well, the use of black and white has often been linked to nostalgia and harkens back to the past and origins of filmmaking and films from the 20th century, before the use of colour was around, and subsequently before films in colour ever existed. For its time, when it was released, that is to say, Coffee and Cigarettes had quite an ensemble cast of celebrities. Bill Murray, Steve Buscemi, Iggy Pop, Tom Waits, Kate Blanchett, The White Stripes, Steve Coogan, Alfred Molina, the Gizzer, and RZA, just to name a few, appear in this film. Reading some of the trivia of Coffee and Cigarettes, IMDb reveals that Jim Jarmusch usually took no more than 2 to 3 takes for each scene, and that most of the actors improvised parts of their conversations. With this knowledge, when viewing the film, the reason I was captivated and focused on most of the scenes is due to the subject matters that are the topics of conversation in the actors' respective conversations. Said subject matters range from nicotine, the consumption of caffeine on a regular basis, music, Paris in the 1920s, and Nikola Tesla and his invention of the Tesla coil. The film could be seen as informative and educational because I myself would not have come across the mentioned subject matters or even learn about them myself before watching the film for the very first time. Back to the use of black and white, this was a great stylistic choice by Jim Jarmusch because black and white films, even those that are still made today, offer introspective and melancholic atmosphere and tones with them because the characters within them are often shown to be honest and true to themselves, whether if they are alone or are around other characters, usually their friends or families and even strangers they meet. While Coffee and Cigarettes is a minimalistic film, as mentioned, both in writing, tone and overall look, I'm going to put my cards on the table and speculate the film's biggest theme and takeaway. Throughout the various conversations between the actors playing their fictionalized selves, they, and Jim Jarmusch for that matter, don't insult the viewer or the audience, or even talk down to them. True, some of the subject matters may come across as unorthodox and truly out there, also trying to come across as philosophical, but regardless, one's attention is fixated throughout the duration of each conversation. Perhaps through these conversations, we see sides of the actors that they may hide from the rest of the world. We see them letting their guards down in order to be honest and true themselves. It is here where I theorize that Coffee and Cigarettes becomes the art of conversations and social interactions. Stay with me on this one. Coffee and Cigarettes was released in the early 2000s. The film long predated what is around and common now in today's society. Social media, iPhones, smartphones and technology itself were not around or advanced as they are now. The actors, even if they come across as obnoxious or pompous like Steve Coogan in his vignette with Alfred Molina, where he only changed his attitude after trying and failing to give the latter his number once he learns he's good friends with Spike Jonze, are able to amicably sit down and converse with each other. Even if they have differences in personalities and interests, they take the time out of their lives to listen and talk. The very acts of conversing and socializing have become lost art. True, we might now not have as much time on our hands, what with our jobs, families, relationships and personal lives. Whenever we do socialize and converse, our attention is always glued to our smartphones and technologies. Sadly, this could potentially be a massive contribution to loneliness. Even with smartphones and the abundance of the internet that gives us access to social media and subsequently many people around the world, it is still difficult to meet new people, to potentially form new friendships and relationships. This is why I consider coffee and cigarettes to now be the lost art of conversations and social interactions. Looking back on the film now, it can be viewed as a time capsule, a moment in time, a bygone era before smartphones and social media existed and became dominant in society and in our day-to-day lives. Not to end on a depressing note, I would say this: Coffee and Cigarettes is arguably one of the best works in Jim Jarmusch's filmography. Personally, it is conflicting wondering if a film such as it could be made today, what with the mentioned social media and technology. If I was to end this video on a good note, I would say do what the actors do throughout the film. Just take the time to socialize. Sit down with others and converse. Even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, put your smartphones on silent and just talk and also listen. One never knows. Through socializing and conversing, one might learn something new about someone, something new about themselves, gain new perspectives on life as a whole, and potentially gain new friendships that could last a lifetime. Thank you for watching and take care.